I did play a bit of this game when it first came out on the Wii, but I never finished it.
Opened a doorway to my
I remember that. What the oh, that Mickey in the back is creepy. That painting, oh my god. No, that's legit creepy. Well, guess this game is scary. Big scary. But no, I remember this game being like basically Mickey for edgelords. Okay, so I just want to start off saying the way I am formatting these videos is all the gameplay you see is going to be from my first either 1 or 2 hours of the game, depending on how long the game it is. Like this game, pretty short, so it's only the first hour, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. And yes, the thoughts that I am saying are all just genuinely what goes on in my head, okay? There's a reason I started streaming on Twitch, okay? But anyway, let's just get right into talking about Epic Mickey Rebrushed. Now, I'm gonna preface by saying I did not beat the original Epic Mickey. I do have it on the Wii. I actually still have it. It's in my garage right now because we just have not bothered setting the Wii up yet. And I say yet, but there's like not really much point to do it. But I do actually still have my original copy of Epic Mickey for the Wii. And now the amount that I did play of this game is pretty small. I did not beat the first boss. So I can't remember exactly where I stopped, to be perfectly honest, because it has been a very long time. It's been basically since the game came out on the Wii, and I just, for whatever reason, just never got around to picking it back up. It's not that I wasn't interested in playing it, I just never did. So with this remake, this is coming from someone who only played a little bit of it, enough to get kind of a feel of the controls and everything for the original game. But I basically went into this otherwise blind. So I am going to go over the basic of the story. I will later go into depth, and I will put up when I am going to talk about spoilers. Because even though it is a remake, given the fact that this is an old game, like, this game came out when, oh god, okay, we're stopping right there. This game came out when I was in high school. Okay, I'm done. I'm old. I'm turning 30 next month, so, you know, just, we're not going to talk about that. But, like, there's definitely a new audience of people who maybe have heard this game, but heard of this game, but they've never played it. They don't know the full story and everything, so I will put a warning for spoilers. So if you're worried about that, don't worry. I got you. We're good to go. The basic of the story is the opening cinematic is Mickey ends up going into the mirror world, where in the old cartoons, it was he ended up, you know, making everything out of control with the brooms started freaking out and way over cleaning, and like he almost drowned the place and the wizard was there. But in this instance, instead, the wizard had on the table a magical map where all the forgotten characters like Oswald and just extras and old cartoons, they were sent there. So he had this magic paintbrush and thinner that Mickey, you know, just, this sums it up perfectly, my thoughts when that was happening. Dude, okay, why is Mickey acting like my frickin' toddlers? Like, he's acting like my kids. They see something and they're like, yes, I must touch it too. Mickey's a frickin' toddler. Yeah, he just ends up spilling paint absolutely everywhere. And of course, with the paint and thinner getting all mixed up, everything goes to hell, and he does what anybody does and just books it because I ain't getting blamed for this, even though it's my fault. I'm out of here. So, you know, years go by, and then he ends up getting dragged back into the world. That's the basics of the plot. Not really anything else you need to know from there. Honestly, I want to say first off with this game, I am obviously maybe not obviously, but I am playing on the PS5, and the graphics, like, it looks really nice. Like, it does have the fact, of course, and when I say the graphics look nice, I'm not saying, like, obviously any realism, because in my opinion, not everything needs to look hyper realistic. Certain games benefit from it, other games don't. Could you imagine a hyper realistic Mickey? That would be horrifying. I'm pretty sure there's like short horror stories and stuff written about that. That Treasure Island one, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. I think it's called Treasure Island. With the Mickey suit. Yeah, that's the kind of thing we're talking about with hyper realistic here. So I don't think we need that. But the graphics look really good. Like, the world, given the fact that it is kind of dingier and dark looking, of course with the dingy and dark looking meaning to be the kind of, it's a little more slightly depressive atmosphere and everything, so it makes sense. And also to have the high contrast with the paint, I think it looks really good. Like, it's even just looking up when you're in certain areas and like you just move the camera and look up at the sky, it looks really pretty, okay? I know it's like a cartoon graphics game, but it just does look really nice. It's got nice atmosphere everywhere you go. Like I said, they made the fact that they had to make a lot of the game dark and kind of similar looking color palette work in order to make the like areas that you can paint or you can use thinner on, like in order to make it stand out. I think they did a really good job still of, yeah, like I said, the color palette was kind of the same everywhere you went, of just dark, but it still looked nice, was pleasing to the eye. It does make it a little hard if you're playing in the daytime though or something sometimes to kind of see stuff. I will mention that, but I mean, to be fair, it wasn't like levels of frickin' when I was playing the Silent Hill 2 remake and it would just be dark as shit, or like even A Quiet Place. It was just so dark. I literally had to have lights off, which I feel like a horror game does that on purpose. This isn't really a horror game, obviously, if you looked at the rating and the fact that it's Mickey and normal Mickey Mouse, even Steamboat Willie Mickey, back then obviously was not public domain, so they had to get the Disney seal of approval in order to make this, so no way was this going to be an actually horror, like, terrifying game. Although I am really surprised Disney let them get away with the fact that, because there are 2 endings and there are choices in the game, I'll get a little more into that later, but I'm surprised they let you make a choice to make a kind of like darker, more evil, selfish, sinister Mickey. Like, that's a little shocking to me. But anyway, like I said, graphics look good. You got callbacks to a lot of places in Disneyland. Like, there's the Tomorrowland, Adventureland, and then just kind of like Toontown or Main Street. Like, a lot of it is callbacks to the Disney park, which I think is really cool. And then you also have the other side-scrolling sections to get between levels where you jump into an old film reel and you're like going through the old cartoons. And I think those sections, they look really cool and they're fun to explore. They keep it pretty short. So when you're going on your first trip, feel like it's, you know, taking forever, but it does get a little tedious if you are gonna go, you know, back and forth through the film reel. But thankfully they do have a way that once you've done the film reel, if it's like places you're going to be traveling back and forth a lot, such as like Oztown and Mean Street, you can have an option to just skip it and pay 10 tickets, which the tickets is like the currency for everything, and they're super freaking easy to come by. I ended the game with like 3,000 tickets. And I was constantly using the fast travel, so yeah. And I even bought like items to progress in the game, and I still ended up with like 3,000 tickets, so it's really not hard to come by. 10 tickets per travel, you know, not a whole lot of waste there. Honestly though, the more important thing besides even just how the game looks is how it plays. And honestly, there are definitely some issues. I had some experiences when trying to jump, like, I'm gonna try to describe this the best as possible because I don't think I ended up really capturing any of it in my footage, but it did happen throughout the game where I would be trying to jump somewhere and then Mickey wouldn't quite catch the ledge, and so he'd end up getting stuck in like a falling animation, and sometimes I could use the spin attack to get myself out of it, and other times I couldn't. Like, most of the time I was able to kind of get myself out of it with the spin attack, but there was one time I remember I did have to reload the save file, which also, as a side note, there is no manual save. It's just, it does the autosave for you, but the autosave is very frequent. Basically, anytime after you do anything slightly major, the game autosaves, so thankfully, even if you do run into a glitch or a bug like that, and you have to reload, it's not really a big deal because it'll basically put you right back where you were. You maybe have to do like one tiny thing, but odds are you probably won't even have to redo the one thing. But there were some of those kinds of glitches. Otherwise too, so the controls with the paintbrush, because obviously your like attack, or I guess paint technically is attacking, but we're just going to call it attack, is using the paintbrush, and using either the paint or the thinner. And this game originally was made for the Wii, which, if somehow you don't know, obviously the Wii has the Wiimote with the motion controls. That was the big selling point of the Wii. It's what Epic Mickey was designed around, with how the whole paintbrush is and everything, is using motion controls. And I remember using that. It worked great on the Wii. It was fun. It was flawless. On the PlayStation 5, there is an option to do motion controls. Now, that might be slightly on me that I turned it off, because for me, using the PS5 controller like a Wiimote, it just was not working with me. Like, my brain was trying to rewire itself to make sense of that and make it work, and that was just not happening. So I turned that off. So I didn't really use it too much, which, like I said, that could just very well be a me thing, that I was just like, I cannot sit here and use the PlayStation controller like a Wiimote. My mind cannot comprehend this. So I ended up turning that off and just using the joystick, and the joystick definitely could be very janky. It would seem, there were times where put the cursor over it, it would light up, it would say it's hitting them, and I'm sitting there spraying this enemy down for paint, waiting for them to become friendly, and it just would not happen. I would have to move. Or like the standing on a ledge trying to hit something, the hitbox would get really weird. And so even though it really didn't seem like there was any reason why you wouldn't be able to stand where you're standing, and I hope I'm explaining this right, like stand where you're standing and aim at something, but all my paint or thinner, depending on what I was using, is just hitting the ledge that I'm standing on instead of actually hitting my target. Like, I would look at it and it would make no sense, and I would have to adjust like fully and like keep doing all these tiny adjustments until finally I did it just right. So honestly, like I said, it didn't make the game unplayable, and the fact that the game is pretty forgiving. There is no difficulty setting, like dying. There's no game over. You don't have a life system. I think maybe if you run out of tickets, you might get a game over. That's how you would do it. But like I said, it's really, really hard to run out of tickets. And I think it costs like 10 tickets to revive yourself. Like, you lose 10 tickets and then auto revive. I think there's the game over screen. I never ended up seeing it because I didn't even really die that much. Because like I said, not a difficult game. Even with it not being a difficult game, like, it was still kind of frustrating sometimes with the paintbrush thing, because it's just like, I'm just trying to do this and I feel like you're not letting me game, and that's kind of rude. I'm not gonna lie. It was a little annoying having to work with that, but I mean, it never broke the game. It never made it impossible to play. Now, another thing about this game too, with the like difficulty and all of that, is it is essentially like a platformer collectathon. Not even essentially, it is. It's a platformer collectathon kind of game. Kind of think like, you know, Banjo-Kazooie, kind of old Super Mario, except it's like a lot shorter. There's not as many different collectibles. The area you're exploring isn't necessarily as big. And there are some like side quests, nothing super ridiculous. They're basically like fetch quest kind of things, nothing crazy. But yeah, the game overall is meant to be a platformer collectathon, and honestly, with that in mind, like the jumping and everything, the controls, they felt good. Like I said, there was a couple times where I had the kind of glitching with the getting stuck falling, but it wasn't enough. It was enough to be a little annoying, and I definitely noticed it, but it wasn't happening like every 2 seconds and like the game was just completely unplayable. All of the puzzles too, because, you know, it's kind of stuff you have to solve with little puzzles. Nothing is very complicated. I only had to look up some stuff sometimes because for some of this game, actually a lot of this game when I was playing it, I was playing while my kids were awake and running around, so I was half keeping an eye on them, which they were cool also just sitting and watching me play a Mickey game because, you know, they like Mickey like any other kids, or they were outside, but so I was like half paying attention, so admittedly sometimes I got a little confused, but it's not like really any of the puzzles were super complicated. So if you're looking for a more difficult game in that aspect, you're gonna want to try something else because the super hardcore difficulty, it's not here. Not that that's a bad thing sometimes. I enjoy having a more basic kind of simple collectathon thing. Even look at the Spyro games. Love those. Nothing really too complicated to figure out. Pretty just, you know, relax and chill. And it's just a nice feeling collecting everything. I did not 100% the game. I am a person who generally, I don't try to 100% a game, but when it comes to collectathon games, I do tend to get a little more, I want to get everything, but I just didn't do that with this game. Now let's go back to, like I had talked about earlier, the fact that there are actually 2 endings to this game and there are choices. So you have paint and you have thinner. So that's the big thing. One of the big things in the mechanics of deciding if Mickey is like good or evil is how do you handle enemies? Because with the generic enemies, you can either paint them that make them friendly, or you can use the thinner on them, which kills them. There are like robot enemies that you have to use thinner on and get rid of, but that obviously does not affect how like the people in this world will view you and everything, because you have no choice but to use the thinner. And then in the world, you know, just depending on if you're using paint or thinner more, that will also play a role in what kind of ending you get. Even for the bosses, there are 2 ways to beat every boss, and they are either the kind of easier, straightforward, beat them with thinner, or you have to do something with paint. Now, your little guy, Gus, the gremlin, that's what they're called, he will give you the hints and point you in the direction of, hey, if you're wanting to use paint, here's how you do that. If you're wanting to use thinner, here's how you do this, which he gets a little more detailed with what to do with the paint, because obviously if it's thinner, that means you're just attacking, just do the normal looking for weak spot. Whereas paint, if you're going that route, you're not outright fighting them, you're basically finding like almost some kind of cheese around it or whatever. So he does get a little more specific to kind of help push you in the right direction. Now, a lot of the times when playing these kinds of games, for the first time, I kind of like to go in the like evil route. One thing I do though, I never do with games that have choices like this. The first time playing it, I never look up specifically like what answer or option leads to this, or what the ending is, if you do the evil or the good ending. Like, I make the choices just based on what choices I want to make. And for this game, I don't know why, but I honestly just felt like going the good route. So I did paint. Admittedly, for the first boss, I don't remember Gus saying like what to do in order to use paint to beat the first boss, or if he even said anything at all, because I just went in with thinner. And then he comes up and he's like, oh yeah, in the boss battle, depending what you did, then that's what's gonna fill your gauge, and it filled my thinner gauge. And I was like, I was wanting to use paint. So that was the only boss I ended up using thinner on, and that was mostly by accident, just because, like I said, I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention and I missed his explanation, or he just didn't say anything about like really specific on how to use the paint, so I just didn't know how and was just dumb and just went in with the thinner. So it's probably on me that I messed that one up. But either way, overall, it didn't really change much. Like, if you have the one boss that you did with thinner instead of paint, you can still very easily get the good ending. Just do everything else with paint. All enemies, don't kill the enemies. Paint them, whether they're the small minions, or if it's the big boss minion, paint them. Or use the like workaround way to figure out how to beat them. I do think it's cool that they do have those two options, and it's a pretty short game. On how long to beat, the average I guess is about 9 hours, and I want to say my playthrough was about 7 or 8 hours according to my PlayStation, and that was also with me at some points having to like pause and go take care of the kids or something. So it's not a very long game, so if you are wanting both endings, you could honestly beat the game twice in the same day if you just have the time. Or you could beat the one ending one day and then go back the next day or a few days later and do the other option. So it does make the replayability in that pretty good, and the fact of, you know, trying to get all the collectibles, maybe beat all the side quests and everything. So it does have some of that replayability. I personally, and it's not that I didn't enjoy my time with it, I'm not like super so wanting to get the experience of what the bad, evil, whatever you want to call it, ending is, that I'm gonna sit there and go back and play through it anytime soon again. But, you know, I would be curious to maybe look it up on YouTube or something. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad game. It didn't hook me enough that I am just desperate to see the other ending. Take that for what you will. Honestly, I can say if you're looking for a kind of in the feel like collectathon kind of game that maybe, you know, it has the kind of darker tone, but I guess could be maybe considered like a kid-friendly way to get kids into like a darker game, or a darker tone if they, you know, are tired of the same like super happy and they, you know, want to pretend to be an edgelord. But yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily pay full price. I did. This was a pre-order. Maybe if you could get it on sale, just because it is such a short game, and especially if you know, already have beat this game. Like, it's worth it if you really enjoyed it, or even if maybe you just missed out on playing the original, but I would just maybe consider getting it on sale, because like I said, there was stuff with like the controls and everything that it was a little janky and kind of annoying to run with, and it's also a very short game. And I'm not saying the length of a game like should be the deciding factor and how much it is, but considering I feel like there are other collectathon games where you can get a lot more time out of it, although this one does have, you know, more of a story. It mostly just depends on what you are wanting out of this game. I don't regret paying the full price for it. I don't regret having it. I had a fun time with it. And honestly, I mean, like I said, it would be worth it to pick it up. You can easily beat it in one day, so it's not like you would having to be committing like hundreds of hours to this game and potentially not liking it. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I try to upload every Friday, but there might be a Friday or something that is skipped just because, like I said, I have 4 kids. I only have so much time to sit and play games. And I do my best, of course, to make sure I have fun and do my hobbies, but obviously taking care of the kids and the house kind of comes first to playing video games, no matter how much I wish I could just go back to the glory days of sitting and playing video games all day. But yeah, my Discord, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, which I will be getting back into streaming with Twitch, just having to readjust schedules because we have a 4-month-old baby, and then I've got 2 kids who aren't taking a nap now, and like, it's just, don't ask me how the 2 nap thing like correlates. It's just a lot, alright? So I'm working on it to get it figured out. But yeah, there's also my second channel, which I'm definitely not doing everyday vlogs. That's just not in my interest for several reasons, but I am vlogging on there. I am back on that. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.